After lunch, you don't go back to the ministry. Not yet. You have time, and you use it the way educated men in Chang'an use their afternoons. You walk. The East Market is different from the West Market in ways that matter. The West Market is where the world comes to sell. The East Market is where Chang'an comes to buy. Domestic goods, Chinese silk, Chinese ceramics, Chinese lacquerware, Chinese medicine. The vendors here speak with regional accents. Cantonese merchants from the south, Sichuanese traders, men from Shandong who sell a particular variety of salted fish that apparently the entire capital is obsessed with this season. The East Market is louder, denser, more chaotic. The West Market has the gravity of international commerce. The East Market has the energy of a city feeding itself. You stop at a pharmacy. This is worth a moment of attention because Tang Dynasty medicine is not what most Westerners imagine when they think of ancient Chinese healthcare. The Tang government maintained an official pharmacopoeia, the Xingshu Benkao, compiled in 659 AD, which was the world's first state-sponsored pharmaceutical reference text. It catalogued over 800 medicinal substances with descriptions of their properties, preparations, and dosages. It was produced by a government committee of 23 scholars and revised through official channels. The European equivalent, the first national pharmacopoeia, wouldn't appear until the 16th century, 900 years later. The pharmacist grinds something with a mortar and pestle, dried chrysanthemum flowers. He's preparing a formula for eye strain, a common complaint among clerks who spend their days reading in dim indoor light. He adds wolfberry, known to Tang physicians as a substance that brightens the eyes and supplements the liver. He wraps the powder in paper. 2 prescriptions. The diagnosis took less than 3 minutes and was based on a tradition of clinical observation stretching back centuries. You pay, you leave, you keep walking. Near the southern wall of the East Market, there is a cluster of shops that sells something the Tang period is beginning to produce in quantities that will eventually change the world. Porcelain. Not pottery, not earthenware. True, high-fired porcelain, white and translucent, ringing like a bell when you tap it. The Tang period is the era when Chinese ceramics technology makes its decisive leap. The kilns at Qing in the north are producing white porcelain of a clarity that won't be replicated in Europe until the 18th century. The kilns in Yue in the south are producing celadon, that distinctive grey-green glaze that Arab traders are already calling the most beautiful ceramic on earth. You pick up a small bowl. It weighs almost nothing. You can see the shadow of your fingers through it when you hold it to the light. A merchant from Persia standing next to you makes a sound of genuine admiration. He's seen a lot of fine goods. This still stops him. You set it down carefully. You can't afford it. By mid-afternoon, the city is at its most alive. This is the paradox of Chang'an, a city engineered for control, for surveillance, for regulated behavior, and yet, somehow, producing one of the most vibrant, creative, culturally explosive urban environments in human history. The control and the creativity aren't in opposition. They are, in some uncomfortable way, feeding each other. The exam system creates pressure. Pressure produces poets. The trade regulations create stability. Stability attracts merchants. The ward system creates density. Density generates culture. You make your way toward the Imperial Academy, where you have been invited to observe a poetry competition. These events happen regularly, organized by senior officials or by the Academy itself, and they serve a social function that goes well beyond the literary. They are networking events, talent displays, auditions, essentially, for patronage and promotion.
The theme today has been announced in advance: parting at a frontier fort. It's a classic subject, one that Tang poets return to again and again. The frontier is real. Tang China's borders are contested. The northwest, where the empire pushes against Tibetan and Turkic powers, is a zone of ongoing military activity. Young men are conscripted. Families are separated. Officials are posted to remote garrisons and spend years in landscapes that feel like the edge of the known world. The poetry of frontier parting is popular partly because the experience it describes is genuinely common. Each contestant has been given 1 hour, 8 lines, 5 characters per line. The tonal pattern is prescribed, alternating level and oblique tones in a sequence that requires you to know the exact phonetic category of every character you choose. The rhyme must fall on specific lines and must be consistent throughout. You cannot simply say what you mean. You have to say what you mean within a cage of formal constraints, so precise that most people would find it paralyzing. The best Tang poets found that the cage was also a springboard. You watch one young scholar, perhaps 22, visibly terrified, finish his poem and read it aloud. His voice shakes at first, then it steadies. The images he has chosen are spare and exact. A watchtower at dusk, cold wind from the north, a letter that will never arrive. 3 of the judges are expressionless. The 4th, a senior official with a reputation for coldness, closes his eyes briefly. That is how you know the poem worked. This is the meritocracy in its purest form. The young man's father is a minor merchant. His family has no connections to the aristocratic clans that still dominate the highest offices. But in this room, for this hour, those facts are suspended. The poem is either good or it isn't. The judges either respond or they don't. If his work is recognized today, doors open. A patronage relationship begins. His career bends upward in a way that his birth would never have allowed. It won't always work this way. The connections still matter. The old families still pull strings. The ideal and the reality are not the same thing. But the gap between them is smaller in Tang China than in almost any other society on Earth right now. And that gap, that small, contested, imperfect gap between birth and merit, is producing an intellectual and artistic culture of extraordinary vitality. While the competition continues, you wander into the library. The shelves are dense with scrolls and bound volumes, Confucian classics in editions that have been copied and recopied through centuries of transmission. Buddhist sutras imported from India and translated into Chinese by monks who spent decades on the task. Xuanzang, the monk whose journey to India inspired the novel Journey to the West, completed his translation work just a century ago, producing 1,335 volumes of Sanskrit text rendered into classical Chinese. His work is here. His translations are used by every Buddhist institution in East Asia. But next to the Buddhist texts are Taoist alchemical manuals. This is where the story gets genuinely strange and genuinely important. Tang Taoist alchemists were engaged in a project they described as searching for immortality, the elixir of life, the pill that would extend existence indefinitely. Their methods were empirical in a recognizable way. They mixed substances, observed reactions, recorded results, refined their formulas. They were not scientists in the modern sense, but they were systematically exploring the properties of matter in ways that generated real knowledge. And sometime around this period, historians debate the exact date, but the Tang era is central to the story.
A Taoist alchemist mixed charcoal, sulfur, and saltpeter in proportions that caused an unexpected and violent reaction. The formula was recorded.
Warned about, actually. The early texts describe it as a recipe for burning down your laboratory and killing everyone in it. But it was written down, preserved, passed on. You are standing in a library that contains, somewhere on these shelves, the earliest written records of gunpowder. It won't reach Europe for another 500 years. The sun is lower now. Through the Academy's courtyard windows, you can see the light going amber across the rooftops. Curved tile roofs in overlapping rows, stretching south toward the residential wards. From the right angle, Chang'an looks almost infinite. Block after block after block of walled compounds, interspersed with temple towers and the occasional pagoda rising 5 or 7 stories above the city line. The giant Wild Goose Pagoda, built in 652 AD, still standing today, still intact in the modern city of Xi'an, is visible to the southeast, its silhouette clean against the fading sky. You leave the Academy as the first drum tower begins to beat. The curfew rhythm, the signal that the day's official circulation is ending. You have roughly an hour before the ward gates close. Most people are moving quickly now, funneling back toward their neighborhoods. The wide avenues, which were crowded all day with foot traffic and horses and palanquins and merchants and monks, begin to empty with a speed that seems choreographed. A city of 1 million people does not exactly disappear, but it restructures. It goes inward. It compartmentalizes. But you are not going home yet. You are heading toward the area near the West Market, where a different city comes alive after dark. The night market. There is no official record of the night market that describes it sympathetically. Government documents refer to it as a violation of curfew regulations, a zone of unlicensed commerce, a disruption of public order. But the same documents also make clear, through the frequency and the repetition of the complaints, that shutting it down was never seriously attempted. Because the people who frequented it were not just poor vendors and petty criminals. They were officials, merchants with serious money, members of the military, the kind of people whose displeasure had consequences. The Tang government understood at some pragmatic level that total enforcement of total control was not actually desirable. A city of 1 million people with no legitimate nightlife is a city with very large underground nightlife. Better to know where it is. Better to let it exist in a specific geography you can monitor, rather than drive it somewhere you can't see. This is a calculation that every state makes, in every era, in one form or another. The Tan just made it more explicitly and more elegantly than most. The lanterns are already lit when you arrive. Red paper, yellow paper, white silk over oil flames. The light is warm and slightly smoky, and it transforms the street into something that doesn't exist during the day. A space that is neither public nor private, neither legal nor fully illegal, neither Chinese nor foreign. It belongs to everyone who chooses to be in it, and that constituency is remarkably broad. Food is everywhere. Vendors with portable braziers are cooking lamb skewers over charcoal, a Central Asian technique that arrived via the Silk Road and never left. Fried dough twisted into spirals and dusted with sesame. Soup made with offal and spices in a broth so dark it looks black. Sweet cakes shaped like fish, stuffed with bean paste. Rice wine served hot in small ceramic cups that warm your hands. The wine culture of Tang China is worth understanding on its own terms. Tang elites didn't just drink rice wine. They also drank grape wine, real fermented grape wine, introduced from the Silk Road routes through Central Asia,
produced in the Turpan region and imported into the capital in quantity. The emperor Xuanzong kept cellars stocked with it.
Li Bai, who was probably alive and almost certainly drunk somewhere in the empire tonight, wrote about wine with an exuberance that only makes sense if the drinking was genuinely good. His poems on wine are not the poems of a man drinking something mediocre. They are the poems of a man who has found in intoxication a portal to a specific kind of truth that sobriety keeps closed.
Tang drinking culture was tied to music in ways that created an entertainment ecosystem of considerable sophistication. You can hear it from 3 stores away. A pipa being played with enough skill that people have stopped walking to listen. The pipa is a pear-shaped lute with a bent neck, 4 strings, and a sound somewhere between a guitar and a mandolin. It came from Persia, traveled the Silk Road, arrived in China, and was absorbed so completely into Chinese musical culture that most people tonight consider it entirely Chinese. That is how the Tang dynasty treated foreign cultural imports. Not as foreign, as material, as something to be taken, modified, perfected, and owned. But not here. Not tonight. Here, money and the invisible protection of powerful patrons creates a pocket of exception in the most controlled city on earth. Inside, your wife has prepared dinner. Rice steamed in a clay pot. Braised pork with soy and star anise. Star anise, a spice native to southern China. One of the quiet flavor revolutions that Tang cuisine was conducting without anyone calling it a revolution. Pickled vegetables, a small fish, river fish, bought this morning at the market and kept alive in a bucket of water until this afternoon. Simple food, good food. The kind of food that requires real knowledge to prepare well, and that most people in most of the world in 750 AD would find extraordinary in its variety and its technique. You stay up later than you should. Tomorrow, the grain records will still need verifying. The dispatches from Sichuan will still be waiting. The ministry opens at sunrise, and your supervisor has made it clear that tardiness is noted and remembered. But tonight the air is cool, and the persimmons smell sweet. And somewhere in the city, a bell is marking the watches of the night. And you are not ready yet to close your eyes on all of it. You have seen versions of this story in the 21st century. You will see versions of it again. The Tang dynasty lasted until 907 AD, nearly 300 years in total. That is an extraordinary run by any historical standard. Civilizations of that complexity, managing that much territory and that much human diversity, do not typically sustain themselves that long. The fact that it lasted as long as it did is itself a testament to the sophistication of the system its founders built. But the memory of it lasted longer than the dynasty itself. Every subsequent Chinese dynasty looked back to the Tang as the standard against which it measured itself. The Song dynasty, which followed the period of fragmentation after 907 AD, self-consciously attempted to recover Tang cultural achievements while restructuring the political system to prevent the military fragmentation that had ended Tang power. The Ming dynasty built its institutions with Tang precedents in mind. Even the Qing, 3 dynasties and nearly 1,000 years later, maintained Tang poetry as the canonical standard of literary examination in the imperial examination system. The artifacts of Tang civilization traveled beyond China's borders in ways that shaped the entire Eastern Hemisphere. Tang ceramics have been found in excavations across East Africa, the Persian Gulf, Southeast Asia, and Korea. Tang legal codes provided the foundational framework for the legal systems of Japan, Korea, and Vietnam, legal traditions that these countries adapted and maintained for centuries. Tang poetry forms are still studied, still memorized, still written in East Asian literary traditions today. The pipa, That Persian instrument that arrived on the Silk Road and was absorbed into Chinese culture is still played. The woodblock printing technology that Tang Buddhist monasteries perfected is the direct ancestor of every printing press, every newspaper, every book. The Chinese diaspora still carries the name. In Cantonese, the word for Chinatown, Tang Ren Jie, translates literally as Tang People Street. Not Han, not Chinese, Tang. When communities of Chinese emigrants built their first neighborhoods in San Francisco, in London, in Sydney, in Amsterdam, they named those neighborhoods after a dynasty that had ended over 1,000 years before. Because the Tang was not just a government, it was an identity, a proof of what Chinese civilization could be at its best. An argument made in silk and poetry and bronze bells and city planning that this particular way of organizing human life was worth carrying forward into the future. You woke up this morning in 750 AD to the sound of a bell. 108 strikes, felt in the chest before they reached the ears. You walked streets wider than anything in medieval Europe. You bought bread from a man whose great-grandparents walked from Uzbekistan. You worked in a ministry that tracked the grain output of 50 million people on paper. You watched a merchant's son compose a poem in a classical form of such technical precision that most people alive today could not replicate it. You drank tea prepared in a method that would become the foundation of an entire Japanese philosophical tradition. You ate in a restaurant culture that Europe wouldn't develop for another 8 centuries. You stood in a library that contained the earliest written records of gunpowder. You watched a Persian lute being played by a woman in a market that technically didn't exist, while men and women from a dozen different nations ate food that had traveled thousands of miles to reach them. And then you went home, to a small courtyard, a persimmon tree, a wife who could quote Du Fu from memory, children practicing the strokes of a writing system that is still in use today. You went to sleep in the most advanced city on the planet, and in the morning, the bell rang again. That is what it means for a civilization to be at its peak. Not monuments, not conquest, not the gold reserves in the imperial treasury. It means that the ordinary experience of an ordinary person, a mid-level clerk, a literate woman, a merchant's son with a gift for verse, is richer, more connected, more full of genuine possibility than what ordinary people experience almost anywhere else on Earth. The Tang dynasty collapsed. They all collapse. Every system, every empire, every civilization that has ever reached a peak has eventually descended from it. That is not the lesson. The lesson is what was built during the ascent. The lesson is what survived the collapse. The lesson is that the ideas generated in Chang'an in 750 AD about merit over birth, about the value of cultural openness, about the relationship between artistic excellence and administrative competence, about the systemic management of complexity at scale, did not die with the dynasty. They traveled. On the Silk Road and on paper, and in the minds of people who remembered what was possible when a civilization decided to be genuinely serious about human potential. 108 strikes of a bronze bell. Open.